That's a good question. I would like to start with one of the recent research from UC Davis in collaboration with UC Mercy did, and they found that if the climate change go like this way, so the California will lose one third of their agricultural production by next 40 years or 50 years. So that's a big alarming because the California is considered as a food basket for the USA. So if they lost one third of their production, that's going to be a big issue. So from that perspective, we can see that California also regulating the water use because of the drought. That's part of the climate change impact. So from that perspective, the agrivoltaics could have a big potential to make the sustainable approach or climate smart approach for the agriculture. So from that perspective, I can see the agrivoltaics has a huge potential to save the water, and to some point, it can help to reduce the heat stress. That is also an impact of climate change. From that dimension, it has a big potential for California agriculture. So from climate adaptation perspective, like when you think climate adaptation, it's more think that okay, with the climate change, like how these crops will sustain. So you can, if you think about the high temperature, like that's basically coming from the high solar radiation. So in that case, some crops really love to some point some shade. Some crops is kind of they love sun. Like for example, tomato, they really love the sun. Some crops like lettuce, berries, they really love to some point some shading. From that perspective, like any shade-loving crops, so like any strawberries, blueberries, lettuce, those kind of crops will be more suitable for agrivoltaics. But even the sun-loving crops, like for example, tomatoes, the DLI requirement, we call the daylight integral. That requirement is around 30 or 35, but even in California in the summertime, the DLI could go even 40, 45. So that means it's the excess solar radiation. They don't need that much solar radiation, although they are sun-loving crops. From that perspective, I see most crops even could be suitable for agrivoltaics perspective. Now it's also very important, like in design aspect, like because every crops is a different. And from that perspective, like we have to think like how the agrivoltaics concept could be optimized based on that particular crops or agricultural practice. The same things could be true for the grazing land or others concept of the agrivoltaic. Okay, so that's for sure very important, but this is a very tough question because as we see that the agrivoltaics concept is being like kind of around us for let's say 5 or 10 years, or could be more than that, but still like it's not kind of very mature technology. Most people are even kind of interested, but they're concerned to some point, especially the farmer, because they to some point are kind of skeptical to adopt this technology because they think like if they adopt this technology, maybe to some point they will lose their agricultural activities because energy making more money than agriculture. So from that perspective, it's a threat for them to some point for their agricultural practice. So my suggestion would be like they should think about how the policy is being implementing in California or in USA to kind of protect the agricultural land. So from that perspective, I think the regulation that we have, it's not very specific for agrivoltaics perspective, but the general regulation for protecting the agricultural land, like the Williams Act, so those will protect the agricultural land. And another things, they should also do some kind of consultation or discussion with the expert from the research institute or some extension institute like UCN or UC Davis. They can get some preliminary idea, like based on their crops or their situation, how the agrivoltaics will impact their crops. So I think those kind of information will make them confident that no, they're not losing a significant crop production, as well as they're not losing their agricultural land to the solar industry. Okay, so that's perspective. One things I really see the research institute should take their roles in terms of the optimization. That was one of the discussion that we talked today. You can say it's a co-location, but co-location sometimes could be easy when the two goal is same. But in agrivoltaics perspective, it's a co-location, but the energy production is kind of inversely linked with the yield to some point, not always. So that means if you would like to get more energy production, you will impact the agricultural production. So from that perspective, I think the research institute, they can check the role. What could be the engineering design in terms of structural optimization to minimize those shedding impact that could reduce the yield. Also, at the same time, they have to think about what could be the approach to optimize the structural design for mounting the PV system depending on the crops or the field to optimize the energy generation. There could be another big things that I would like to see. That if you see that how plant is performing, that's usually kind of quantify or evaluate based on the Macri curve. That means they don't need all the lights. They need like more red light than blue and very small portion of the green. They don't need the infrared or UV to some point. So that means like if you can design the system or the solar cell that will only harvest the energy that need within the power range, we call the photosynthetically active radiation. So that will be, I think, a game-changing point for adopting the agrovoltaics concept, because if you can really pass the light that plant need, you are not impacting the plant growth. So if you can make that things, that will be, I think, the big milestone. And the research institute should focus, okay, how the technology could be developed based on that concept, so that you are not impacting the plant, but at the same time you are generating the power from the agrivoltaic side. Another things I think also still kind of need more investigation. If you see how crop is responding to that agrivoltaics or underneath the agrivoltaics. So most of the research so far have been done for very pilot scale for selective crops. But I think more investigation is needed to see the impact for diverse crops, for different scalability aspects, so or some economic model or business policy for the agrovoltaics, so that the farmer have a concrete idea that how this technology will benefit them, as well as they can be assured that, okay, no, it's not a kind of threat for them, it's a kind of benefit for them.